friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hantz. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with David Salter from An Evening with Dame Granny Smith. The legend of stage and screen returns to the stage for an intimate, in-conversation event. Armed with nothing but an apple, ventriloquist David Salter conjures up an hour of whimsical theater full of heart and bite. If Judi Dench and Barry Humphries had a baby raised by Norman Bates on a diet of champagne and was an apple, it would be Dame Granny Smith, the Australian showbiz veteran and literal apple, fresh mostly from a sellout season at the 2025 Adelaide and Edinburgh Fringe. Expect musical interludes, audience participation, and laugh-out-loud hysterics as audiences catch themselves falling in love with an old piece of fruit, which might otherwise be rotting at the bottom of a school bag.
They become instantly more like children, no matter how old they are. There's something really mind-opening about this sort of cartoonish thing coming into the real world and being presented on stage, that they let their guard down immediately. Most people. I mean, some people will still cross their arms and want nothing to do with it. But on the most part, if you're good enough to make it look like it's alive enough, then people will let all their defenses down. They'll laugh in ways that they haven't laughed in my show yet, until the puppet comes out.
David Salter is a South Australian-based actor, musician, and puppeteer. His debut solo show, Make Believe Children's Songs for Grown-Ups, won the 2018 Adelaide Theatre Guide Award. He co-wrote and performed in the 2024 sellout Disney musical horror comedy hit Dystopia, and returned to the Adelaide Fringe in 2025 with a sold-out season of An Evening with Dame Granny Smith, which won Best Variety. The show toured to Edinburgh for another sold-out season. Dave, welcome to What the Fringe.
Hey, Lauren, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here. We were just talking about this, before we came on air, but I want to share with everybody how we got connected. I was set to review your show in Edinburgh in 25, and I was super excited. I actually had just met a ventriloquist earlier that year, and I was like, I'm going to go see a ventriloquism show. I was very, very excited. And I was like, and it's an apple. It looks really cool. And so I had booked the show, and I had booked another show. There was a big storm, and the show got delayed, the one that was before yours, significantly. And so I was already there. So I missed your show. I wasn't able to book it. So when I found out you were going to be in Adelaide and I was going to be in Adelaide, I was like, yes, I have to go see the apple. And so I was just very, very excited. And I was like, let me get this guy on the show and we'll go from there. So I'm just like super excited that you're here today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here too.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey as an artist before we get into your shows, before we get into the apple. So you do like puppetry and ventriloquism. Now, for our friends that may not be as well versed, just give me like the difference, just a quick rundown between puppetry and ventriloquism, because I know they're like cousins, but very different.
Okay, often when you're just doing standard puppetry, the puppeteer will be hidden either in a black suit or behind a cloth or a stage. Think Punch and Judy, and the puppets will appear outside of this performer. You're not meant to know that this performer exists, really. And performs the puppets, sometimes with dialogue, sometimes with other puppeteers. With ventriloquism, you're fully aware of the puppeteer. They are on stage with the dolly, the puppet, whatever you're going to use. You can see that they're controlling the dolly, and you can see that they're voicing the dolly, but hopefully you don't see that they're voicing the dolly because you do it without moving your lips.
Love it. Love it. Okay. So is this an Australian thing? Because I met a ventriloquist here in the States and he was dead set on, so you just said dolly, but he calls it a figure. And I was like, if I ever meet a ventriloquist, I need to say figure and I'll sound like I know what I'm talking about. Or is it different? Do you guys call it something different?
I use apples. So, I don't feel like I've got any real standing on what I should be calling it. I've never been part of the community. I've never really hung out with other ventriloquists. I don't know the lingo. It's sort of something I've learned a bit on an island in a way, And every time I've loved a couple. I've seen a couple of great ventriloquist shows. But no, I've learnt sort of by myself and I've just learnt what I needed to and then sort of got on my way. So I think dolly is just like that really old school. It makes you think of those creepy dollies with the back and forth eyes and the funny jaw. A lot of people still don't come to the show because they're scared. Well, they hear ventriloquism and think, oh, absolutely not. I'm not going to see anything like that. And I have to say, it's not. It's literally, because I use a real apple, I just bite a little face into it, which is an old Shari Lewis trick. Shari Lewis, the famous American ventriloquist. Are you familiar?
Yes, with the little lamb.
Yeah, lamb chop. She was broadcast here, and she would, I'd wake up every morning and go rummaging around for bits of paper for origami or toilet rolls for different bits of craft. And she showed me how to make this, a puppet out of an apple. And I was just thinking about it for so long, and I thought, oh, I'd do it at school and annoy people. I didn't realize that you could be a ventriloquist. I thought you had to sort of be born as a ventriloquist, because watching her, it's just flawless. It is perfection. You don't know that she's doing the voice. And I was really shocked when my dad said, God, isn't she amazing doing both of those voices? And I was like, nah, Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. So then eventually I did learn, and it took a while, did learn how to do it. And I had this little apple thing that she'd sort of given me in my childhood. And I thought, what can I do with this? I had a 10-minute comedy set at an open mic night that I needed to do. And I was like, all right, just write something for this. And there she was.
That is so cool. So the lamb chop got you into all of that. So when you were a kid, you made like puppets and things like you were already like very interested in that art form?
Yeah, well, Shari Lewis used to teach you how to do little magic tricks. So I think magic was the first thing that really got me into any sort of performing. So I'd do little magic tricks and would ask for a magic set for Christmas, learn how to play the piano from my grandma, and yeah, would make little puppets, little craft things, put on little shows in the lounge room with my sisters. I'd play some music and they'd do ballet, and that sort of very wholesome family entertainment. And then I think that grew into amateur theatre, community theatre, and playing at bars and pubs when I got older into my adulthood. And then sort of has just recently zeroed into like stand-up, cabaret, ventriloquism.
Yeah. And when did you start incorporating like music? You said your grandmother taught you piano, but was that kind of like your main art form, or was it theater or combination of all of that?
I think so. I think it's sort of, I've never really been confident as an actor, putting on a really good face or walk or voice. So I think when I started doing shows, I was like, all right, we'll distract them. I'll do a little song. I'll do a little puppet. I'll do a little magic trick. I'll say some funny jokes, be self-deprecating, have a few character lines and some funny stories, so that they won't see that I'm a bad actor. I'm not as self-conscious anymore, and I'm not just trying to throw everything in front of people for distraction. But I think that's where it evolved from, just trying to pack out the show so that you couldn't tell that I was not so great at any one thing.
You're like, I'm kind of good at all this stuff, and everybody's going to be wowed at all the amazing things I can do. So were you putting a bunch of like solo shows together that were these like variety shows, one-man variety shows? Is that kind of what you were doing?
I started doing a lot of work for children when I was a teenager, I guess. And so, again, you'd be like, okay, great, I've got 40 minutes. What do I know? What do I know that can fill 40 minutes? I'd always leave it to the last minute. They weren't good. They became better. As you practice weaving from one thing to the next, and sometimes that bridge becomes more interesting than either. And then you're just left with this, and this can go. And, everything evolves. That's pretty much where I landed before really homing in on ventriloquism. And I think I started to practice that the most and got the best at it out of everything. And it's also the rarest. Like, not many people do it. And so you can be fairly good in your field because there are 3 people in your field.
Right. Yes. It's definitely like a niche art form that I think is really cool. What do you find? Like, I have some friends that are puppeteers, and I was working with some kids this summer. We did a puppet camp, and there's just something really special about having like a puppet on stage. Like, what are your experiences with that of having, we'll talk about Granny in a minute, but maybe just some other puppets or other dollies or figures that you've had. How do you think audiences just like change, I guess, when they see that figure up there?
They become instantly more like children, no matter how old they are. There's something really mind-opening about this sort of cartoonish thing coming into the real world and being presented on stage that they let their guard down immediately. Most people. I mean, some people will still cross their arms and want nothing to do with it. But on the most part, if you're good enough to make it look like it's alive enough, then people will let all their defenses down. They'll laugh in ways that they haven't laughed in my show yet, until the puppet comes out. I got this puppet that's a book, big eyes, and it's a book with a little bookmark, and very expressive, has really goofy sort of face on it. And it came with some suggestions, and one of them said, maybe if you're a pastor, it could be the Bible, and you could tell Bible stories with it. And I'm not a pastor, but there was a political and religious sort of thing going through the parliament in Australia at the time that I got it. And I went, okay, it's the Bible, and I can put whatever I want into the Bible's mouth at this point and get it to say its own truth. And again, breaks down people's defenses because I'm not saying those mean or naughty things about the Bible or, irreverence or sacrilegious things. It's the Bible saying it itself, and it's a cute Bible with a funny little voice. So you can get away with a lot more. And yeah, just people are charmed by it.
Yeah, I love that puppets can say things that humans can't, I guess. I mean, we can, but they have so much more leeway. But they can also speak those truths, right? Like I don't know if they're like the jester or, something like that of like, not only can they say the funny and things we are all thinking, but we don't say out loud with our mouths, but they can say those like really nuggets and people really listen, right?
They do, yeah. And things that might even sound a little trite or, too sweet, because I'm really a naturally very cynical person as well. And so if I were to say some of the things that I use the puppets for, which, is a more sweet, innocent, tender, naive sort of perspective, they can sell it a lot more and it carries a lot more weight than if I was to say it, which I find really nice.
It is. It's because it's got big eyes or whatever.
There is something inherently childlike about most ventriloquist puppets, no matter what the age of the puppet. I find that they are usually a little naive and they need learning and they demand growth. And so that endears the audience to them, I think, as well.
That is so brilliant. It gets the audience involved, right? And they're now on the side of the puppet. I want to help you get whatever it is that you're getting. That's really cool. Okay, so you said you've just been doing Fringe. How long have you been doing Fringe, I guess, is my first question.
I reckon I'm going to go say I'm 38-ish now, 37, 38. I think since I was 21, so that long. Because we've always had it in our backyard in Adelaide. I'm from Adelaide. Well, I grew up most of the time in or around Adelaide. We have always had it in our backyard. We'd go as kids every year and see the buskers go out, just go out for a weekend. And so most actors or community theatre performers will always cobble together something or be asked to, play piano for. There was a whole string of years that I was playing piano for a burlesque company, and then I'd get involved in doing a dance, like a comedy dance or two or a comedy song or something like that. Yeah, it's so easy to be a part of when it's right on your doorstep.
I'm so jealous. I don't have a hometown Fringe. So that's so cool that you've been involved in Fringe for so long. I was going to say, like, why Fringe? Why would you take Granny, there? But it sounds like you're like, oh, well, of course, that's the place for her to go, right?
It ends up being like what most of us try out, because it's cheap. We've already got accommodation here as well. You got some idea, any little idea. You just do 3 nights and at a place that no one needs to go to if you don't want them to. But if you just want to test out the material to then take maybe to Edinburgh or to anywhere, you can always test it out at the Fringe, maybe bring it back next year. Or it's always been a great development process. Yeah,
that's another thing that's really exciting, I think is kind of unique about Adelaide is that the runs are varied and they can be quite short or quite long. It's a bit like Edinburgh is going to give you, they want you there the full month. And then like in the US, our Fringes and in North America, they're anywhere from like 1 weekend to like 10 or 12 days. And usually you're doing the whole run of the festival. Not every day, but you're usually doing the full run of it. So that's really exciting that, you can just go and try it out.
I like that difference in the Edinburgh Fringe sort of system of where, the booking that I had was 1 month. We had 1 day off in a month. And how much you get out of your show and your own writing and how much you can tweak just doing it every day, day in, day out. The ability to just go, no, that song is just not working. I'm going to cut the whole thing or find something else in another joke and then expand on that night by night. And it's so good for your craft, I think, being able to perform every day for a month.
Like, how much did your show change from, because you've kind of got probably a variety show of some sorts. Like, how much did it change from the 1st of August to the end?
I did. I took out a song because it was just weighing it down, which just gave the whole thing room to breathe a bit more, which meant I got to improv a little bit more in the crowd work, and I got to try a couple of other jokes that I'd always been thinking about and go, oh no, if I'm only doing it for the show for one night, I don't want to risk any moments that it's going to really fall apart. And so you go, it's one night, and I'll keep it short, and I'll pick it up afterwards, and we'll keep going if it doesn't work. And so I definitely slipped in a few jokes that I thought were a little riskier, and they've stayed. So that's really nice.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's talk about An Evening with Dame Granny Smith. We talked a little bit about the apple, like you've been playing with that for a while, but how did this show kind of come together? You just started doing it last year, yeah?
Yeah, though I reckon it's been a few years since I had this 10-minute spot at a open mic variety night. And I wrote 10 minutes. She wasn't Dame back then. It was just a Granny Smith apple. I actually think it was a red apple, but because it was an old lady, I was just calling her Granny Smith. It wasn't perfect, but it gave me like the basis of a lot of the jokes that are still in the show and a lot of her character. I'm just going to show you a photograph of it because I do have one here. I've just bitten a couple of eyes here and then half a mouth. You just half bite the mouth. Shari Lewis can teach you how to do this better. Leave a little skin flap here as a hinge, which you can sort of manipulate with your thumb. And she doesn't have a lot of expression, but she sort of does because the audience sort of projects whatever they're imagining her to be doing. And I'll do certain things with my voice onto this sort of face. And she's very effective, actually.
That's so cool. Do you draw anything else on her? Like eyeball or the pupil, I guess?
No, I don't. She's got this huge blank sort of stare. And I can't work out why it works, but people still go for it. I'll notice when I'm looking at her, that especially close up, it's a little freakish. But I often leave it for a couple of days. Like I bite it, then I'll leave it for a couple of days on the counter. So it really browns. And so then you've got an interesting texture to it. I don't want to spoil anything, but there is a costume change where she puts a face on. And so I was looking up all these photos of like Liza Minnelli and in Cabaret and Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard, with the mole and the big eyes and big lips. So she does get quite glam, which again is quite fun because that is just me in my apartment the night before a show with some nail polish as lipstick, just like a normal day in the office, just drawing a face onto an apple with some nail polish.
Okay, has her mouth ever come off like during a show? Like
it has. Which led me lucky it happened early. I'm really glad it happened early because then I've been experimenting with different types of sellotape or medical tape to just reinforce that a little bit. But even then, the juice can run from her mouth and dislodge that tape. But again, that's why I like to leave. I took that song out, and having 5 extra minutes up my sleeve means that can happen, and that can be quite fun, depending on where it happens in the show. But I've had a few different outs and different ways to deal with that, and they've all been quite fun.
Yeah, I was like, I would feel like you would have to plan for her mouth to fall off at some point. Like, it's going to happen. And so that's brilliant.
Often it's something to do with dentures. It's most often loose dentures that she's had fitted. I do have a lovely stage manager on hand with about 6 apples in her handbag. So, there are contingencies.
Okay, because I'm imagining, in Edinburgh, you're like, here's Monday's apple, Tuesday's apple, Wednesday's apple, but you have multiples. You're not biting her and then showing her to the audience. She's got a brown, right? So yeah. I
used to, in the first 10-minute act, I would do it on stage. But then, of course, if one eye is like this and one eye is like that, you're stuck with that for 10 minutes. She doesn't look great. So I go to the local greengrocer and I find a good apple and buy a case of it. And I sit there at the start of the week and I just bite until the whole coffee table is filled with all these apples. I had some people round back to my flat for a drink in Edinburgh, and they just sort of walked in. They didn't know what I was doing for the Fringe. They knew I was there for the Fringe. They walked in and then just sort of looked at me and looked at all the apples with little faces on it, and then I think that they thought that they were going to be killed that night.
Yeah, I was like, they're like, this guy's going to murder us and bake us into an apple pie.
Yeah, it was. I should have thought about it, but I didn't.
I guess when it's Fringe, you're like, I don't know, we don't ask questions. Just, I don't know.
I think so. I would think it would be one of the more normal things that you would come across in someone's apartment or luggage.
200 apples, like, just staring at you.
Tiptoe through the tulips, playing on a little radio somewhere in the background.
That's great. That's great. Okay, and then in this show, do you play instruments as well? What other kinds of variety?
I do. Generally, the conceit of it is that I'm an interviewer. I'm here for a sort of in conversations with Dame Granny Smith. We're doing a retrospective of her career. She's the big guest of the evening. That's the conceit. And throughout that, where we learn about her history, she started in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And she has recently been gotten in trouble for doing red face. This is the kind of quality of humor that you can look forward to. Throughout that, she does like to show up a couple of her bigger songs, for instance, when she was backup dancing with Carmen Miranda. So she does pull out a few songs and a few sketches, a few little stories, poems, back from vaudeville days. She used to have this great section. The one I removed was when she was actually, it wasn't that great, but I had fun. She was doing Lady Macbeth in the style of Lady Marmalade, so like witchy ya ya da da. That was the only backing track song, really. So I was really glad to have that removed, because now I like playing everything live and the challenge of just having one hand. So I've got to be holding her for most of the time, and so I just then rely on the audience to come and some volunteers to, play the other side of a guitar while I'm playing the other side of the guitar, which is fun. It builds, again, camaraderie.
That's great. They're like, I'm doing it for the apple, bro.
And she can, critique them and their technique and how badly or well it's going, and they still love her. So
yeah, that's so exciting. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like the show does get quite heartfelt at some point, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. I'm not sure how it became the ending. The ending that we've sort of, I won't tell you what it is, but was a bit more sweet and sad. And I think it's because a lot of where this character came from was I used to work in nursing homes, and so a lot of the things that I would write down in my notebook as funny little phrases or characters are a bit sad and repetitive. It's got to do with aging, dementia, loss. I'd see all these families who are losing their I was losing a lot of my friends, working there. It's really, the show ended up being based around my time working in nursing homes.
That's beautiful. What are you hoping, people walk away from the show with, or what are their experiences? I
think it's a bit of a cliche, but I want that sort of feeling of like, oh golly, I should call my grandmother more. I've got to visit more. Like tomorrow, I'm going tomorrow. Or I'm hoping that, if they see some past mistakes that they've made, if they regret not spending more time with their family, then I'm hoping that they don't wallow in it too much and can enjoy the lighter side of the insanity of them, having any sort of emotional ties towards a talking apple.
Well, is it wanting people to have joy?
Yeah. My favorite bit is when they're laughing along, they're all enjoying it. They think that they know who this character is. And then I can see at different times, I can see people falling into chuckles because they're realizing that what they're looking at and realizing that they've been tricked by it. And they're just thinking, why am I being affected? Or why am I laughing? Or why am I believing this insane thing? That's my favorite, is when they just can't believe that they have fallen for it.
That's so fun. I love it. Well, I cannot wait to see it. I'm super, super excited. Now, you're working on another show as well. You taught me how to say it, and I feel like I'm going to butcher it. Marquisite Muse.
That's right. Marquisite Muse. But I think Marquisite, it's like a stone or a crystal or something like that. And a color. It's a color of grey. But we spell it with a Q, not a C or a K as it's meant to be spelled in real life. You'll sort of work that out from the play. But it's based on Grey Gardens, the 1970s documentary about Jackie Onassis's cousin and aunt, a mother and daughter who were left alone in a beautiful beach house in Long Island, which then sort of, without funding, crumbled around them with 52 cats and no plumbing. And various elements of paranoia and isolation and strangeness. So I sort of have always wanted to do a production of that, of Grey Gardens. But because it's a documentary owned by a, production company now, you can't use anything that those two have ever said in the documentary. There has been a play on Broadway about them, but of course you can't use anything from the play unless you pay a lot of rights. And so backdoor thinking of it was, what if these two people grew up in high society Adelaide and in Australia, and we've just sort of adapted that from there to, we found a lovely venue that's also has been an old furniture store. And so we put that in their backstory. It was the only thing that was left in the family. And so that they're now living in this old furniture store. And it's promenade theatre. So you get to walk around the space, follow these two women up and down stairs and through different doors and rooms and understand their story.
That is so exciting. Well, and it kind of loops back around to having a fringe right in your backyard, right? And that you guys have open access is the type of fringe it is. And just being able to do this really immersive show. You have connections with folks. Tell me about like kind of putting that together, pitching this idea like, hey, I want to do this kind of immersive promenade type of thing. What do you say? Would you like to let us come in and have all the cats and people?
Well, initially, like with in terms of the creatives that I'm working with and cast, two of them in particular, one of them is an actor and one of them is my fellow writer, have been on board since the beginning of the idea a couple of years ago, when I would just say, oh, wouldn't this be great if we could do Grey Gardens? Oh, how would we do it? Who else would we get? We can't do that. We can't do that. And then I was talking to one of the actors while I was in New York, and we went to see Sleep No More, the fabulous immersive theatre piece, which is sadly now closed. Then that spurred on that idea. And Cass, who runs and has run so many great fringe venues throughout Adelaide, Melbourne's history, Tuxedo Cat, several. She has Arthur Art Bar in the city, and it is a multi-space sort of, she won't mind me saying, dive bar, where I performed Granny Smith there last year. There's art installations in it. Anyway, it was the first place I thought of that was local, has different rooms, and she said, we go dark every Wednesday, so we don't have any shows on Wednesdays. You can strip everything out and put everything back in. And I thought, great, we'll be getting there in the morning, taking down all the fringe posters, putting up our own stuff. She was also keen because she's building a false kitchenette up in one of the upstairs rooms as an art installation, but also somewhere just to hang because she is a firm believer in that everyone ends up in the kitchen at any good party. So we now have a kitchen upstairs that we can script in. And she's really happy for us to leave posters, frames, tidbits, in drawers and our own furniture in all of the upstairs rooms and just leave it. And so people can use all that furniture from day to day while they're between shows. And it will make it easier on us bumping in and out. She's a wonderful helper to Australia's indie art scenes and band scenes. So she was just really keen to jump on board and say, what can I do to help?
I'm so excited. And then the biggest question, are there real cats in the show?
One of the actors does have several cats, but I think I'm worried too much about allergies and putting people off with that. So we have some lovely stage managers and sound designers who are going to probably be playing with the illusion of sound and, lights and tapping curtains and, whatever else we can get away with to try to make that work.
Right. I can imagine the Fringe show that's like Cat Cafe. Do you guys have does anybody have a cat cafe in Adelaide?
I don't know if we do. My partner is really allergic to cats, so we would have not frequented them very much. But I can look one up. Are you a big fan of cats? Are you a cat person?
I'm a dog person, but I feel like it's like the Fringe version of the Cat Cafe.
I mean, that could be part of it. It could be like a sort of best dressed party, but like best cat party. The audience has to bring their own cats.
It can be a stuffed cat. It can be a cat in a carrier. It can be a cat in a backpack.
A friend from down the road, because I'm actually managing a cafe in the summer season here for a few months of every year. And it's an outdoor cafe, a dog-friendly cafe. And a friend of mine who comes there has actually just started bringing her cat on a lead. And it is a strange thing to see. I don't know why that's so strange, because we see dogs on leads all the time. Why is it so strange that a cat's on a lead? No.
Because cats, they have their own mind and they don't obey you, right? And they're little tiny, slippery things. And so how do you get them to stay in their harness? I don't know.
It sort of feels beneath them or something. Like, it's not something I want them subject to,
Right. They're like, no, that's not for me. Okay, well, I'm going to get here to my last question because I've had so much fun talking with you. I could talk to you all night. What is your most interesting or awkward Fringe interaction that you've ever had? You've been doing Fringe a long time. I'm sure you've got a gazillion stories. Pick one.
There were so many times that I could pick, especially working in the burlesque shows to do with, audience interaction. And I think my favorite, though, was last year. I was doing Granny Smith upstairs at this Arthur's Art Bar, Cassandra Tomb's beautiful dive bar, which is in a 1930s like Art Deco full brick building, no air conditioning, windows that do open, and haphazard sort of, DIY lighting setups. Anyway, it was a 38-degree day, and it had been for a few days. And the night before, I had leaned over to talk to someone, and a ream of sweat had dripped from my beard into their glass of wine, which they had put on the stage. Their own fault. That's not really the interesting story, but that was pretty gross. I don't think they saw it, though, so they probably still drank it.
Yes, they did.
Don't put your wine on the stage, people, please. Please don't. But they had just installed temporary air conditioning, one of those wheel-in boxes, and they put it on stage so I could have relief and hopefully it would drift out to the audience. And we'd all just... the show was starting late. We were putting that up, and I got the audience to applaud. The person who installed it, Connor, our lovely tech, our house tech, as soon as they applauded, the whole power in the upstairs area just went down. And because, it's a large venue, he was managing a lot of things, I didn't have time to, leave the stage, go down to tell him, come back up, leave all this audience waiting. And I think everyone sensed that. It was sort of getting on. And so they got out their little torch lights on their key rings and their phones, and they all shone me a light, across the audience. And they all just leant in so they could make sure that they could hear me. And we did, a quarter of the show, half the show, just like that, without any tech, just the audience lighting me and them listening very carefully to the tiny little Apple talk. I think I probably moved my mouth a bit too much because I needed them to hear. But again, everyone was so forgiving, and there was this real great sense of camaraderie that was just, I felt like it was my favorite show, just because everyone was so on board and we were all locked in together and we were there to make the show happen. And so there was no doubt in my mind that it was going to be a good show. It was just always had to be one of the good ones.
Yeah, that's like the beauty of Fringe and the beauty of live theater, right? We're all in this space together. We're all here together. This is what has happened. What are we going to do about it? And that is absolutely beautiful. I love that story. I'll put my wine on your stage, drink your sweat. Sounds like a good thing to do too. So,
You're allowed, Lauren. You're allowed.
Just drop Granny's mouth in there at the end, too, and we'll be...
Disgusting, salty, sweet punch.
We've got our sweaty sangria here tonight.
Oh, my God, sweaty sangria. Now, that is like the name of a album or a band. I don't know. That's great.
Maybe Granny sings it, Sweaty Sangria. It's her song.
I love it.
All right. Well, Dave, it has been amazing chatting with you today. Thank you so much for coming on What the Fringe. I really appreciate it.
I've had a lovely time. Thanks for having me, Lauren. I look forward to seeing you in the flesh in a little while at the Fringe.
Yeah. This is going to be amazing. Well, An Evening with Dame Granny Smith is playing at the Adelaide Fringe from the 20th of February to the 7th of March at the Courtyard of Curiosities. And the Marcassite Muse runs every Wednesday evening of the Adelaide Fringe at the Arthur Art Bar. And you can keep up with David on Instagram at David John Salter. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hantz. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear are provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube, so be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. And keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions, and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. You're at the Fringe and you spot that reviewer who gave you a bad review, and you're just staring at them from across the room, and you start to picture them as
those creepy dollies with their back and forth eyes and their funny jaw.